To respect those processes before you talk about that matter.
Now, an interracial kiss on Afrikaans soapie Sewe de Laan this week has sparked comments from some fans who thought it was inappropriate. Sewe de Laan's creators has called for an end to hate speech. In a statement, it said it won't tolerate hate speech or racism. The show believed it is important to reflect what is happening in the country, and that includes the fact that love knows no gender, no race. So to discuss the uproar that the kiss has caused, we're joined by actor Tony Koroge and Terry Oakley-Smith from Diversity, a change management consultancy. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us this evening on Newsnight. And I think before we cross over to Tony, I think, Terry, we need to start off with you. Why is this even an issue in 2019? I saw a lot of social media comments saying the very same thing. Why have we given love a color and love a gender, particularly at this age?
Well, I think the harsh reality, Faith, is that so little has actually changed in South Africa. I remember many years ago, maybe 12 or more, when John Carney was playing Othello at the market with Joanna Weinberg, and she was Desdemona, and they kissed, and that caused an absolute uproar as well. But I think that if you think that in South Africa, there's such a little same-status contact between people of other races. I mean, only 46% of South Africans say they ever socialize with people from other race groups.
Sure.
52% have never had someone of another race in their home.
52%?
Yes. So this is from a study done recently by the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. So if you think of people who live such narrow lives, of all races, living in their bubbles, partly because of apartheid geography still, then you can see that to actually see a black and a white person kissing must come across to them as rather shocking.
Yeah. Now we're going to go and tackle the matter and dissect this issue even further. Tony, I want to bring you into this conversation because it almost appears as though a stamp has been put on South African film and television industry having a responsibility to reflect the realities of this country, but most importantly, to reflect what needs to change. If we're truly going to build a diversity in a united country, then it should come from us being able to display such images and us being able to talk about racism and talk about love, knowing no color, no gender openly.
Well, no, that's true, yeah. And you know, one of the things that worried me when all this happened was that we're starting to worry about who actually watches this program and what are the age groups. And because I look at it and I think, you know, my grandmother watches it and she loves it. The helper at home watches it and she loves it. So who within that group and the age have that problem with two races being in love with each other. And more than anything else, you know, this becomes heavier even on the creatives themselves, whether the writer or the producers, to come up with stories like this, because there's this wall that is created between creativity and what the society thinks. But our job as creative is to depict exactly what it is that the society is going through without any favor or anything beyond that.
And I mean, depicting what South Africa is going through and really depicting where we are as a country in 2019. Though criticism has come in and said, why are we even giving the story the light of day? As you've mentioned, Terry, that unfortunately the realities on the ground, the realities of the ordinary South African are such that they do not really interact with different race groups as much as we'd like to think they are, as much as Instagram is showing a different picture, Facebook shows a different picture, but on the ground, people's daily lives, they're depicting a may not necessarily be as diversified as we think.
Well, I don't think that we are nearly as diverse as we think. I mean, my work is all about trying to bring people together in different companies and institutions. And, I mean, I think that obviously the media has a major role to play, as you said, Faith. But I think we need to really dig deep and do far more than we have been doing in the last 25 years now. I mean, for example, if you look at that issue about that school in the Northwest where the teacher was suspended and then obviously reinstated for taking the picture of the children in the classroom. I mean, that's not an unusual sight, children separated in classrooms in South Africa, even in 2019. And I think we need to be looking at how do we train our teachers? How do we what do students know about race? What do they know about gender? But race particularly, because we come from such a very serious racially divided past. And I think that maybe media needs to look more seriously at the issues of race and what it means. How do we educate our children about race? Yeah. If so few of us ever visit each other's homes, I mean, how do your children, or how would your children ever know really how to respond to a white person? They are at school together sometimes these days.
But John is at school, and then we've got Tsepo that is at school, but Tsepo goes to the township, exactly. John goes to Sandton, and they hardly ever even relate.
And the teachers
in the classroom,
who are, depending on the race of the teacher, they'll be much more comfortable with Tsepo if they're black or with John if they're white. And they haven't been educated themselves in how to deal with diversity, how to make sure that all children have an equal opportunity to learn.
Now, Tony, just looking at how we perhaps need to even accelerate, one may say, in terms of being able to tell such stories of maybe not as much as the South Africa that we're living in. And yes, fine, we do have a lot of interracial couples in the country. That's not the point. The point is that clearly on the ground there is still a huge divide that leaves room for great storytelling, but leaves room to also depict a type of South Africa that we'd like to live. Because just to read out this, I just want to read out some of the messages that came across. It's hateful messages. One saying that, you know, this is terrible, and I'm glad you're not my wife after that episode, and I would never have kissed you again. You're dragging white girls' name through the mud. I mean, that's hatred, pure hatred.
Yeah. No, that's true. And then, you know, one of the things is that we look also into the broadcasting corporations that we have, or the broadcasting companies that we have. You still have channels that are dedicated to a certain race, and other channels are dedicated to a certain race. And within that, then you will find that the others' budgets are very different from the others. So that is a problem that we have to look into. You look also into what the Department of Arts and Culture is trying to do in reaching out for issues of social cohesion. If you go to these gatherings, the only people that you'll find there are black people. And in social cohesion, it really needs everybody, every South African to participate in it so that we can make this country a better country. I mean, if you remember what happened to when one of our Springbok guys was getting married to his white wife, the comments that were coming there as well were the comments that were not human at all, if I were to put it that way. So we really need to build a country in thinking of one South Africa without thinking of any others as small silo or segmented groups within South Africa that can make, I don't know what it is, I don't even know how to explain it properly, but the silo mentality of how we work as races within South Africa is actually becoming a stumbling block to the progression of what we have to achieve as a country.
And I mean, you speak about a very important point here, Tony, saying that we talk about social cohesion. This comes from even a government level, and we speak about having social cohesion advocates, program that even myself I was involved in. But you find that you cannot have a conversation about racism and about unity if you do not, and about diversity, if you do not have a representation of all colors and creeds in one room, being able to talk about their standpoint. And maybe that's where we're failing really as a country when we talk about this uniting and this building a better South Africa. We talk about, it's wonderful speech, but when it comes down to it, are we really capable of being truly diversified, even us as media, to even get in and have different perspectives from different color barriers?
You know, I wanted to agree absolutely with what Tony said about the silo effect of different media platforms, basically. And I think that builds into this. But I also think you're so right, Faith, that, you know, the work I do is all about trying to get people to have these discussions. And I think, sadly, even though whites only make up 8.5% of the population now, we still haven't come to the party when it comes to issues of social cohesion.
Why? But and here's why I'm asking the why part. Why haven't white people come to the party? Is it because of guilt? Is it because of feeling frustrated and marginalized in a new democratic South Africa? Is it feeling afraid right? Now that Nelson Mandela has passed away, is something going to happen to us? Are we going to be thrown into the sea and cast away? What is it that is preventing white people from coming to the party and having open conversations about privilege, about racism, about moving this country forward?
Well, I think, first of all, there are very few platforms for it. I mean, for most white South Africans, the only black people they really know are the people that, say, work in their homes or that they see in their workplace. So the platform is not there. I also think that the whole Nelson Mandela Rainbow Nation was a complete myth. And in a way, we got off scot-free. I mean, before 1994 and after, our lives hadn't changed as white South Africans.
Yeah.
In fact, for many white South Africans, their lives are even better, their quality of life. If you look at the recent Employment Equity Commission report, white men still occupy the top 3 levels in all organizations. So what is the need for us to really reach out and reconcile? We're quite comfortable in our little bubbles.
Because the feathers have not necessarily been ruffled. And Tony, I'm going to bring you in there. Is this how we start ruffling those feathers? I mean, as Terry is speaking about how there's no need to come to the party as a white South African minority, maybe this is how we start ruffling the feathers, by showing that actually integration is better than working as silos and separation. Okay, we seem to struggle to reach Tony there, but I think that is just having a problem with his earpiece. However, looking at that, is that how we would be moving forward, Terry? Just looking at finding ways of having such images and telling stories and almost imposing it so that we ruffle the feathers.
I mean, I've been saying for ages to different media platforms, why has nobody ever done a real, genuine series of programs about race? Because race is not only about white and Africans, it's also about so-called coloured, it's about South Africans of Indian descent, and the tensions between the groups obviously differ, but they're there. And it would help enormously if we created platforms to really discuss and go into these issues so that people have a chance to really get to know one another and really talk to one another, because that's really not happening.
This is very true. I believe, Tony, you can hear me now. Just looking as we quickly wrap up, how do we move forward and how do we move this subject around race forward? Do we start imposing and showing more and being deliberate in what we depict on television? Or do we simply just have more social cohesion advocates who are there and coming to the party?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to look into what is it that really makes people to fear to come together. And that's where we must start. Let's identify that and make sure that we deal with it and we solve it and bring people together in them talking about their fear. Whether it's been losing the white supremacy, or black people feel inferior, or black people want to now get over into becoming the black supreme tribe, or race, or whatever it is that becomes a stumbling block in bringing people together. We need to sit down and look into it and really discuss it in detail and sort it out and make sure that South Africans understand each other and they can live together as a nation.
Yeah, and perhaps this is exactly where these conversations start, right? Being able to have this conversation on a public platform. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us this evening. It's a great pleasure. And shedding some light there. It starts with a kiss, but hopefully South Africans will be ruffled a little bit and some real change will be seen. Terry Oakley-Smith as well as Tony Goroga joining me for that conversation.